Welcome, Daniel Nation, to our monthly podcast, the Daniel Report. It's good to have everybody back on our show tonight. And this evening, I have two very honored guests with us, State Representatives Brent Money and State Representative Keresa Richardson. Brent and Keresa, how you doing?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Doing great. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you with us. So we're just going to jump right into this. Brent, I'm going to let you go first. First of all, congratulations on the formation of the Texas Sharia Free Caucus. So tell us a little bit about why did you guys form this caucus in the Texas legislature?
Yeah, I just think that right now we are at a time in our nation and in Texas in particular where we are facing an existential threat of Islamists coming in to just fundamentally change our way of life, our rule of law, and our culture, our religion. And we are seeing it in our own area with this epic city trying to build a Islamic only enclave where they're kind of running a parallel society, and I don't think that that's what Texas is about, and we need to come up with legislative options to try to address that.
Awesome. So, Keresa, I know that you're one of the charter members of the caucus. Why did you join the caucus?
Well, for the same reasons as Brent. I mean, in my district, we've got Epic City going in and several other mosques. We have a larger population of Islamists moving in, and there's a lot of confusion, and we're trying to bring the spotlight to Islam and what they believe. And Texans by nature, Southerners by nature, are very accepting and very kind people, and we just need to educate everyone about this threat for Texas because we've been targeted, and we need to be aware that this is a spiritual war, and we need to be prepared for this. And people are not really well educated about, we have all these different religions, and we think that they're all Christian religions, and so we're very accepting of religion, and of course it's protected in our Constitution, but this is not a religion. This is a culture. And so we need to educate people about this. And so I think being a part of the Sharia Free Caucus helps to bring that to light and help people understand what we're up against, because it really is a spiritual war.
And thank you, Keresa. So, Brent, a lot of Texans have not heard of this new caucus because you guys just started it. So, could you just tell us maybe in one sentence what your stated mission is and why it's important?
Yeah, in fact, I don't have our mission statement kind of pulled up here, but it started with the Sharia Free America Caucus, started by Keith Self, Chip Roy. I think Brandon Gill is a part of that, and a lot of other Texas congressmen. And it is just our goal to bring attention to this matter and come up with policy solutions so that this totalitarian, civilization jihad doesn't happen here in Texas.
Awesome. So, Keresa, coming back to you here, I saw on X this weekend that the Collin County Islamic Association held an open mosque day, basically there in Plano, and invited people to come in and say, hey, Islam is not scary. But they made a statement that somebody posted on X that they're already practicing Sharia. They admitted it pretty much openly and brazenly, but they said, Sharia means a lot of different things, helping your neighbor and doing good things and so on and so forth. So what's the big scare? Why is Sharia such a scary thing? Should we be afraid of Sharia law?
Yes, absolutely we should. So the tenets of Sharia are to overtake. They want to overtake the world basically, and they do it by jihad, which is their war method, or they do it by changing civilizations very subtly. And so that's what they're doing by inviting us into their mosque to say, hey, we're really nice people, accept us. They're trying to invite us into that world, but they're deceiving us. as to what they're really doing. So they, they have a man can have 4 wives. They can have many, many more children than Americans do. They begin to overpopulate when they overtake a society, and then they have many other. I would say it's a slippery slope. Many other things that they ask of us, and so they're inviting us in and pretending to be something they're not. But we are being threatened by Sharia law. It does exist, and even though it was outlawed in Texas, it's still being practiced. So we need to educate people about this.
Now, Brent, at the state convention last month, when I talked to you there at one of the breakout sessions, you mentioned that the difficulty with Sharia is trying to define what it is because it's so many different things. So you're a lawyer, right? Can you tell us, sort of from a legal mind, what's the real definition of Sharia as a law?
Yeah, the problem with defining it is that the words that we use and the words that they use are not all the same words, and so they have the same. They're the same word, but they have completely different meanings. And so, Sharia is a way of life. It is a legal, political, religious, and even militaristic way of life. It is totalitarian. There is no room for dissent or disagreement. And it supersedes any civil law that is not in compliance with it. And it goes to everything from child marriage and all of these horrible things to things like how you're supposed to enter a room and how you're supposed to go to the bathroom and what you're allowed to eat and what you're allowed to wear. And it just is all encompassing. And it doesn't just apply to the adherents. Where Islam has power, it applies to everyone that lives in that region. And so if you do not comply, then there are punishments for that. And so I think that people have a hard time, like Keresa said, understanding this as Westerners, as Christians who believe in this. We do believe in a right of free conscience. We do not want to. Christians call people to repentance. We don't demand repentance at the threat of violence, and that is what Sharia does.
Yeah, thanks for giving us that definition, Brent. So, Keresa, can you give our viewers maybe a couple of examples or one good example of where Sharia law conflicts with our constitutional freedoms, maybe somewhere in the United States or even around the world right now? Where's it conflicting with constitutional freedoms?
Well, I think one of my biggest concerns is the lack of freedom for women because of Sharia law. We have fought for equality for women in America for 100 years. And in Sharia, a woman's testimony is considered half of a man's. A son gets twice the inheritance as a daughter. Women lose their custody of their children during divorce. Men are allowed to beat their wives, and then they're not questioned about beatings. A man can have 4 wives. They can take, as Brent said, children as wives. And so for me, a large part of my, angst about Sharia law is how poorly women are treated. Now, there are many other things, but that's just an example of when you have this duality of legal systems, the women are not being protected. If in our courts, women would be protected, in Sharia courts, they are abused.
Yeah, thanks for giving us those examples. So, Brent, you're in the legal system. Are there already examples in Texas where Sharia is already in disputed cases or proceedings in our legal system in Texas?
Yes, and I wasn't prepared to answer with chapter and verse, but this has been going on for more than a decade in Texas. And in fact, the legislature attempted to address this back in 2017, at least as far as it deals with family courts, but left some loopholes. And people will point out, hey, honor killings are already illegal, and yes, they are, but they believe they are still happening. Female genital mutilation is illegal, but it is still happening. So what we have done so far it has not been effective to address it. And the issue for me is not necessarily how bad are things today. My concern is making sure that things are not bad for my children and for my grandchildren, because what we have seen is when the Islamic population is small, 1 to 3%, they're mostly peaceful, respectable, and as that grows, it starts to change. The demographics change as they gain more power. Their activity changes, and we're seeing that across Europe now. I don't want to be in a situation where, because I was unwilling to do uncomfortable and difficult things today, that my children are left to endure violent things tomorrow.
Yeah. So, Keresa, are you aware of any foreign governments or organizations actively promoting Sharia governance inside the United States right now?
Well, I mean, look at Minnesota. Look at what's happening up there. We have Michigan and Minnesota, but Minnesota, I think, has the #1 concentration of Muslims, and you can see what it's done to their society. So there's a lot of corruption, a lot of theft, a lot of crime. It's just not. It's not a system that we can tolerate in the United States, and so. Within the United States, yes, we are seeing them overtake certain communities, and that's a problem. We're seeing the results of this as the population grows. As Brent was saying, as the population grows, they become more and more demanding. Then they want to do their prayers in the streets, and they want to have loudspeakers to call to prayer, 5 times a day. They want to do these things, and they begin demanding prayer rooms in the school so their children can leave. All of these things come as their populations and their numbers increase. They become more and more empowered and demand more.
Do you mind if I
to
answer that question a little bit?
Sure.
So our governor and the governor of Florida, Governor Abbott and Governor DeSantis, have both declared that Muslim Brotherhood and the Council for American Islamic Relations CARE are foreign terrorist organizations, and they should be treated as such. We currently have imams in Texas who are not allowed to go into certain Muslim countries because they're deemed too radical, and yet they are teaching here, probably within a few miles of where we are sitting collectively right now. And so that is happening. We also have, and I want everyone to understand this. This is a copy of an explanatory memorandum from the Muslim Brotherhood in America. This was a document that was uncovered in a law enforcement action back about 20 years ago, and it has been used. It was used in the Holy Land Foundation trial, which is the largest financing trial in America, terrorist financing trial in American history. It was included as evidence, and in here it is Muslim Brotherhood's plan to take over America, is what it is. This was a document. I'm reading from it right now. It has become clear and emphatically known that all are in agreement that we must settle or enable Islam and its movement in this part of the world. Therefore, a joint understanding of the meaning of settlement or enablement must be adopted. And so they're going to tell you what they're trying to do here in America. And it says, in here, basically, this is not just the guy that wrote this. He says, this isn't just me saying this. This is what we all decided at our last annual meeting. And this is the document that came out of that. And I want to read what they mean by settlement. They said the purpose of this document is to explain what settlement is in America. And this is a short quote, but it should be chilling. The process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process with all that word means. The Muslim Brotherhood must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers, the Muslim believers, so that it is eliminated and Allah's religion is made victorious over all other religions. It is a Muslim's destiny to perform jihad and work wherever he is and wherever he lands until the final hour comes. And there is no escape from that destiny except for those who choose to slack. That is their plan, is civilizationalist jihad and to destroy the Western civilization from within. So for centuries, we have Islam destroying civilizations through the power of the sword. And they've gotten to the point where they know they can't overtake America militarily, but they are focusing on how to infiltrate our institutions and overturn us from within. And you're seeing that plan play out across Europe now. And anyone who is not aware of this, who's not paying attention to it, who doesn't believe them, should really follow me on social media, other organizations that are out there that are actually showing clips of what imams are saying in English about what their plan is here for America.
So, I mean, Keresa, what do you say to Texans that are listening to what Brent is saying and they're like, oh, that could never happen in Texas, never here? Well, what would you say to them right now, the naysayers?
Well, as Brent said, look at other countries. I mean, it is happening. The UK is about 15 years ahead of us. And so we need to pay attention to what they're doing in other countries. I think they've overtaken 47 nations now with this civilization jihad. And so we need to pay attention to what's going on around the rest of the world and realize that it's happening here. And we need to wake up and sound the alarm and educate people. So we just can't afford, for the sake of our children and our grandchildren and future generations, if we want to keep Texas and keep our culture strong, we can't allow outside cultures to come in and influence us.
So, Brent, can you give us an idea of what your caucus is attempting to do? Obviously, you're a legislative body, so that means you want to create laws. What kind of laws are you trying to create?
Yeah, so I would say at this point, we started March, first week of March this year. And we have been doing a lot of education of our caucus members and just of Texas voters in general about this problem. We were able to participate and along with a lot of other groups and a lot of other people, make this one of the top two priorities coming out of the Republican Party of Texas convention. And now we are focusing on legislation. Without getting into a lot of specific details on legislation, because some of it's still being drafted and there are reasons not to just completely show our cards all right now. But what I've been saying, and I think this is helpful, is there's categories of things that we need to address in order to deal with this problem. One thing we need to address is just immigration generally. We cannot continue to allow anyone from anywhere to come to America just because they want to. We have got to pressure the federal government to do their job and prepare for how Texas is going to respond in a post-Trump or even post-Republican world. Not just illegal immigration, which we definitely need to get a handle on, but the legal immigration as well. Texas, I think, leads the country or is real close to the top in the number of H-1B visas. That's people who are coming here to take Texas jobs away from Texans, and many of them from parts of the world that practice Sharia law. So we need to clamp down on immigration, both legally and illegally, by putting pressure on the feds, but then also by doing what we can as Texas. So that's one category. Second category, a lot of this is tied up in terrorist financing, financing coming from terroristic organizations and financing going to terroristic organizations. And we need to make sure that we are giving law enforcement the kinds of tools that they need to investigate and chase down these things. I mentioned the Holy Land Foundation. case a few years ago. I mean, that was from a few years back. I think it's 2011. I could be wrong about that, but um, uh, whenever it was, Obama shut it down after the Holy Land Foundation trial and didn't allow them to continue going after the organizations that were deemed unindicted co-conspirators there. So we have a lot of unindicted co-conspirators that need to be indicted and need to be prosecuted. And we need to make sure we have the tools to do that. Third is the behaviors in Sharia law that we've talked about that conflict with Texas law, making sure that we have strong laws to investigate and prosecute and deter those kinds of behaviors, the kinds of things that oppress women, the kind of things that abuse children, and abuse our finance system. And there's a lot of different places where it is problematic. And then finally, I would say we just need to reaffirm that we are a Christian country, and that as a Christian country, we do not require everybody to be Christian, but our laws are going to be based on Christian principles and worldview and viewpoints, and that we are not going to be apologetic about that. We're even the people who don't attend church as regularly as they should, or maybe they've never made a profession of faith, or maybe they just see themselves as non-religious. They're welcome here in this state, but they're living in a kind of Christian saturated culture, and Christians ourselves, we haven't done enough to maintain that, and it's eroded over the last few decades, and we need to get back to it. But that is the foundation of this country. That's the foundation of our state, and we don't need to abandon that. We need to reinforce it.
Yeah, so Keresa, I mean, I get this a lot, separation of church and state. I get this all the time. Obviously, there's no issue with the 89th legislature proclaiming Ramadan and proclaiming Eid al-Fitr and proclaiming Muslim holidays. But the second we go out in the 90th legislature and proclaim Texas is a Christian state, oh my God, here they all come with their knives out. How are you going to address that issue?
Well, I don't believe in the separation of church and state, but that is a false belief that many people do believe. We have to fight back. We do have legislators within the Texas House that promote some issues from Sharia-based culture, and we have to fight back and not allow that. And I know one thing the speaker did towards the end of session in the 89th was he stopped allowing outside pastors to come in and do the daily prayer, because we had pastors coming in that were not of a Christian faith. And so he had to stop that. So because we had all these other ideas that were infiltrating the Texas House. So this next session, we just have to stand strong, and we have to speak up, and we have to be more vocal. And we do have more and more Christians that are coming in, that are being called by God to come in to serve. And for that, we're very grateful. So our numbers are growing, and I believe we're making progress in the state of Texas as far as standing up for what we believe in.
So Brent, I know you get this.
Can I talk a little bit about separation of church and state? It's one of my favorite
things
to talk about.
You're a lawyer, so I'm going to let you see if you can legalize this for us.
Well, I would say, I don't believe, like Keresa said, I think that the interpretation of separation of church and state, what people think that it means, has been dramatically corrupted since Thomas Jefferson first put that in a letter to the Danbury Baptists. It was there to reassure the Danbury Baptists that he, as president, was not going to impose anything on them that was going to prevent them from being able to worship God as he pleased. I do believe in that sense there should be a separation of church and state. The state should not tell the church how to worship, or when it's allowed to worship, or when it has to close for COVID, or whatever it may be. That is a separation of church and state. Likewise, the church should not be doing some of the things it did, centuries or a millennia ago, when it was carrying out civil punishments against people. That is something that God left to the state. So there is a separation of the powers of the church and the powers of the state. But both of those things, we believe as Christians, are under the authority of Jesus Christ. God set up different governments in the world, a family government, state government, and church government, and he set them up differently for different purposes, but all of them are under his authority. So there is no separation of God and state. There's a separation of church and state. And so we need to kind of take that back to its original understanding, where Thomas Jefferson, even though, he's supposedly kind of the least Christian of the founding fathers, when he was the president and he was trying to decide, it was his job, actually. He was on the board of the first District of Columbia Public School. The president of the United States back then served in that capacity as well, as a member of and the president of the chairman of the board of the public school in the District of Columbia. And it was his job to decide what the reading material was going to be for the elementary students. And he assigned exactly 2 books, the Bible and Isaac Watts' hymnal. That was it. And so, but yet he didn't believe that we should have, he has used his phrase, separation of church and state, is used to say, man, we shouldn't even be allowed to let people pray in schools. We shouldn't be allowed to let people read their Bibles in schools because of separation of church and state. Well, the separation of church and state guy assigned the Bible to be the reading curriculum for elementary students in the District of Columbia in public schools. So obviously we have misinterpreted what that was intended to mean.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brent, 100%. So, Keresa, I'm going to let you have the first shot at this question, but I know Brent's probably going to want to say something too on this one. Those that are going to say to you and your caucus members, well, we have to defend Islam under the First Amendment. It's a freedom of religion issue. How are you going to preserve the First Amendment while opposing the implementation of Sharia law in Texas?
Well, you're confusing Islam as the religion, and Sharia law as their governing entity. So they're 2 different things, and we do have freedom of religion in the United States and in Texas, but we can't have 2 different cultural laws. We got one constitution in the U.S. and one Texas constitution. And so where there is conflict between our governing laws, then we can only have one. You can't move here from another country, bring your laws with you, and think you're going to implement your laws into America. And that's the difference between Sharia, their laws, and Islam, their religion. And they're 2 different things, even though in their religion, they combine the 2. As Brent was just telling us and educating us, we have a separation of our church and our government. They don't. They combine the 2 together. But we cannot allow that combination in the United States. We cannot allow that in Texas. So we have to delineate between freedom of religion and the laws that they're bringing.
Now, Brent, I know you're going to, thanks, Keresa. Brent, I know you're going to want to say something on this one, but let me say 2 things. Number one, what Keresa said is absolutely correct. As long as we, the Americans that understand our Constitution, are in power, but as they grow and get more into power, I'm not sure they'll observe that. And number 2, how do you pull the intertwine between Islam and Sharia out when you've got the Quran, the Hadiths, the Muhammad's biography? It's so intertwined with their worldview. Is it possible for them to practice Islam in Texas without following the more ardent principles of Sharia?
I think that's a question for them. I think we have the ability to outlaw the things that we don't think should be legal in Texas. And if they decide that they're not able to even privately practice their religion at that point, then that would be, their choice. But what I would say is, once again, I think our understanding of what the First Amendment has become is just plain incorrect. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution grants a freedom of religion, right? That's what everybody knows, freedom of religion. What is the first word in the First Amendment? The first word in the First Amendment is Congress. says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It does not say Texas shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or states shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. It says Congress. Why was that? Because at the time that the First Amendment was ratified, 9 out of the 13 states had an established religion. And as the states formed the federal government, they said, we do not want one state or another winning this kind of religious disagreement battle and forcing all of us to be Presbyterians or Episcopalians or Lutherans or whatever the case may be. And so remember, the states established the Constitution. They were free and independent nations in 1786, whenever before the Constitution was ratified. And so for about 10 years there, Georgia was a country, and Virginia was a country, and New York was a country, and all the 13 colonies were individual countries, and they came together to form the United States of America, united being lowercase united States of America, on what kind of government they wanted. And so they said that Congress shall make no law. The states were able to establish religions, and almost all of them did. South Carolina, it said that the Christian Protestant religion shall be deemed and is hereby constituted and declared to be the established religion of this state. North Carolina, New Jersey, Vermont, New Hampshire, Georgia. I mean, almost every single state back then had an established religion. You couldn't hold public office in that state unless you declared that you were a Protestant, that you believed in the triune God and the inerrancy and inspiration of the Old and New Testament. I mean, it was extremely religious back then. But religious, when I say religious, is not religious the way that we would think about it, which is all the religions of the world. It was 97% Protestant, 2% Catholic, and then 1% other. That's kind of the way that it was. And so people have to understand what the Constitution says in light of what the people who said it meant when they said it.
Yeah, I appreciate that explanation, Brent. So, Keresa, coming back to you, right now Sharia is being practiced, I'm assuming, kind of quietly, maybe inside the mosque, maybe inside people's homes. The more radical aspects of Sharia, like honor killings and such, we're not really sure if those are going on right now. But what are the warning signs that Texans should be paying attention to that Sharia is becoming more entrenched in our state?
Wow. They're very subtle, and that's why I think that people are not aware. But, Epic City brought this to light, right? When they finally started setting up these neighborhoods. You can drive around the Epic City in Plano, around the mosque there, and you can see that there are armed security guards. It's very difficult to get near the mosque. There's Arabic written on the outsides of the homes. The streets are blocked off. I won't say it's a no-go zone, but it's getting close to that, where police are afraid to go into some of these areas, and that's not even the most highly populated Muslim area of Texas. We have quite a few of these around the state. In some areas of Houston, we've got imams going and telling local stores you can't sell pork. They don't want dogs on the streets. They're beginning to, in some parts of America, I've seen videos where they're worshiping in the streets. In New York, they're doing their daily prayers. They're taking over the streets and bowing down and doing their prayers in the streets. So we are seeing these signs where they're beginning to be empowered, and they're wanting halal food now in schools, and some restaurants have halal menus. So it's beginning to creep into our culture, and we're beginning to see signs that they are making inroads with these cultural cultural things that they're bringing to bear. So those are just a few of the things that we're beginning to see.
So, Brent, I mean, I know you're not ready to talk about specific legislation and tip your hand, but what will the caucus's goals be towards trying to protect women and children and those most vulnerable to the coercion of Sharia law in Texas?
Yeah, I think we need to look at places where our current criminal law is not adequate, and ensure that we either increase penalties, do things that make things easier for law enforcement to detect. But we also have to look at these independent, private kind of enclave communities. There are places in Texas now, Plano, Irving, near in parts of the Houston area, where a Muslim can go their whole life without really ever interacting with a non-Muslim, and that is part of the plan. They kind of have a two-pronged approach. One is to kind of what we talked about, infiltrate our institutions with respectableness and friendliness, and get into positions of power and influence. And the other is to have these parallel societies that are insulated from our culture. And so we have to figure out a way to prevent or penetrate into those parallel societies to ensure that people are not on Texas soil being raped and beaten and genital mutilation and these kinds of things in a way that we just can't ever detect, because we're not able to observe any of these kinds of behaviors.
So, I mean, Keresa, one of the, I won't call it weaknesses, but maybe shortcomings sometimes of our legislation is the enforcement mechanisms. We say there's no teeth in the bill to enforce. So when it comes to Sharia, because it is such a huge, topic of practice, how will we enforce if we say, let's say your caucus passes a law, gets it through and says you cannot marry children under the age of 8, which we already know is illegal in America, but we're going to say that's true in Sharia, or you cannot do genital mutilation, you cannot do honor killings. And let's say we find out, I know there's currently here in Collin County, Muslims are buying up cemeteries, creating their own cemeteries out in the country, burying people underneath the eye, of not really the government, kind of doing it privately, and we're fighting that right now. But let's say we find out there was an honor killing done, or there was a genital mutilation done, or there was a child bride that got married in Texas. How are we going to enforce this? Are we going to get the Attorney General involved? We're going to get the governor involved? We're going to get the FBI involved? How do we stop this?
Well, we already have. We do have the Attorney General looking into some of these things. Recently, a friend of mine who volunteers at a pregnancy crisis center had a Muslim woman come in and tell the story of her female genital mutilation as a child. And this was in Texas. So when we find out about these things, we do report them to the authorities, to the Attorney General's office, sometimes to the Sheriff's office. Last week, in my district, we identified one home in the district that had 2,200 H-1B visas assigned using that address to that one residence. And so I immediately contacted the Attorney General's office and then also the Sheriff's office, and they're investigating. So yes, we have to instill harsher penalties, greater fines, and we have to engage our law enforcement and our Attorney General's office. We do have to put teeth into this, and that is a problem in the Texas legislature. Sometimes we pass bills, and it might take 2 or 3 more sessions before we get the teeth in the bill to make it really work for the intent of the bill. But I spend a lot of time just connecting law enforcement agencies when these things are discovered.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, man. That really, we appreciate that so much, Keresa. So, Brent, what do you think the biggest hurdle is going to be to getting any legislation passed on this topic in the 90th? You got 2 Muslim state lawmakers right now. Obviously, they're going to oppose this. We don't know who all is going to come in November and get elected either. What's the biggest hurdle you're going to face trying to pass stuff?
I think the biggest hurdle always is you got to get 76 people in the House You got to get 16 people in the Senate, and you got to get the governor. And so, we need wins in November. There's no doubt about it. We need people not to be complacent just because it's not a presidential election. We've got to get Republicans involved and make sure that we get Republicans elected, and then we have to hold our Republicans accountable to get this stuff done. The biggest hurdle, I'm not going to be shy about it. The biggest hurdle is how to do this constitutionally, legally. Obviously we have a framework of the Constitution that, as I've explained here a couple of times, I don't necessarily agree with on some important issues, but it's what we have. And so within the current understanding of the Constitution, we have to draft legislation that will protect people here in Texas from coming under these abusive, Sharia law behaviors. And then we need to find ways to challenge that understanding of the law and push back on the way that the First Amendment is currently interpreted. Obviously, we need the people of God to pray and to preach and to study their Bible and to talk with their neighbors, even their Muslim neighbors, and pray that the scales will fall from their eyes and that the Holy Spirit will convict them in their hearts.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Keresa, walk me through a committee hearing in the 90th session. Let's say you or Brent are sitting on the committee, and you're going to be hearing from Muslims in Texas that don't want this legislation passed. And this nice lady in a hijab comes and sits down and says, we're just peace-loving Muslims, and we don't practice Sharia except to take care of our neighbors, but we don't do honor killings and all these other things. And we just want to practice our religion, but we don't want you to pass this bill because we feel like it's persecuting us. How are you, as a member of that committee, going to respond to that citizen?
Well, I would say we, as Christians, we love. We show Christ's love to each other. And we have to love them into the kingdom. We don't, unlike Sharia, we don't kill you if you don't accept our religion. We love you. And so we would try to show the love of God. One thing I pray every day is for truth to come to light. As Brent was saying, we need the scales to drop from their eyes. We need them to see truth. We need to love them. But at the same time, we have to be strong. We have to be warriors, and we have to tell the truth. We have to speak the truth in love. And so, my admonition to them would be, we love you as a person, but we disagree with this particular, whatever it is they're trying to, whatever the issue is, the topic is. We love them, but we have to stand firm when it comes to our laws, and we have to speak the truth in love.
So, Brent, from your perspective, is it possible for a Muslim to freely practice their religion in Texas while still observing our constitutional republic? Or for them, do you think it's going to be a challenge?
Islam, as I understand it, does not leave any place for not following it in its totality. But that doesn't mean that there aren't people that are doing that. There are absolutely, I'm sure, Muslims here that are not following Sharia law on female genital mutilation, who are not killing apostates, and who are not doing a lot of the things that are required under Islamic law. And so, can you read the Quran in Texas? Yes. Can you pray to the false god Allah in Texas? Yes, you can. And there should never be a law saying that you cannot do those things. But if you faithfully follow what the Quran, hadiths, the Sunnah, the Islamic law says that you're supposed to do, then I think you're going to have I want you to have a hard time remaining in Texas if that is your goal.
Yeah, so Keresa, is this issue ultimately about protecting personal liberty?
Hmm. In part it is. In part it is. We have to protect our personal liberties, but we also have to protect our culture, our way of life, our Christian heritage. All of our laws are built on Christianity, as Brent said earlier. And so, where there's a conflict between our laws and their laws, which are in combined part of their religion, then we have to fix it. We have to make our laws strong, and we have to identify that. And we've not been good at that. We've not wanted to rock the boat. We've not wanted um, to have the appearance that we are that we're unloving or unkind or unwilling to work with anyone. But we have to draw a line in the sand like they did at the Alamo and say, you're not crossing it. We're going to keep Texas, Texas. And we can't let you do these things because they will gradually encroach into into our everyday way of life, as we're seeing in some of our metro areas already with the shopkeepers and the imams and what they're. I mean, you just go online, go to YouTube, and just look it up and see the videos of what's going on in Texas in some of these areas, and it's eye opening. It's quite frightening, actually.
So, Brent, can you tell our audience who's joined the caucus so far, and are other legislators expected to join this caucus in the 90th?
Yes, so far we have, I believe, 50 members of the Texas House of Representatives that have joined. We have probably a dozen or so that are Republican nominees that are interested in joining, but they're not allowed to join a caucus until they're elected in November. And I think more will join by the time we get to January when we get sworn in. But there's been a lot of good conversation, a lot of good momentum here, and I think we're going to be able to accomplish a lot in the next session.
So, Keresa, I know you've already got obviously attorneys in the caucus because some of our House members are attorneys. But are there any national scholars or national organizations that have also agreed to help with this effort in Texas?
Absolutely. Brent's done a great job of bringing in scholars. We've had people from the UK who've come over. We've had scholars who've come and spoken with us. They're educating us on this as well. And so, I can't remember all the names. I know Frank Gaffney was one of them, but we've had several that have come to help us understand the problem. So as we write this legislation, we're more discerning about that. So we are educating ourselves in the process, and I have to give kudos to Brent because he's brought in some excellent speakers to help educate us.
Awesome. So, Brent, where can people go to support the work that you're doing? How can they support the work that you're doing? How do they get in contact with you?
Thank you. My I guess social media has a lot of information on it. On X, it's at Brent Money, and then I think on Instagram, it might be at Brent Money or at Brent Money TX. I'm on Facebook, and I post things there often, just about every day on this issue. We also have a caucus email, Sharia Free Texas at gmail.com. You can email there and get information, get put on our email list and things like that. And I would say this to everybody that's listening, for my benefit, for Keresa's benefit, for everybody's benefit. We have a difficult battle ahead of us, and we need financial support. And so the caucus doesn't spend much money except for to bring in these speakers. That's really what we're doing. People who know this issue, and sometimes they have to fly across the country to talk to us, and we do that. But Keresa and I and other members of the legislature, we need to get reelected. We need to hire good staff, and the state only provides a little bit toward our staff. If we want good staff members that could really help us We have to provide that through campaign funds. And so if people would, donate whatever you can to that cause, that would be helpful as well.
Awesome. So, Keresa, last question for you. 5 years from today, what will success look like on this particular issue in Texas?
Wow. Well, I hope we pass legislation that has teeth in it, that will protect the citizens of Texas and our future generations from the infiltration of outside um, legal entities that will impact our way of life, impact the way of life of future generations. Because we've seen, as I said, 47 other countries are, used to be Christian nations, and they are no longer Christian nations. So we have to be strong, and we have to do these things, and we have to pass these laws now, because um, Sharia is gaining momentum. And so 5 years from now, I hope that that those things are in place to protect Texans, future Texans.
Brent, last question for you. For Texans who are watching this show tonight, what is the message you would like to leave with them?
I will leave you with two messages. Number one, regardless of what we think about the policies that allowed this many people from hostile areas with hostile ideologies to come into our country, the ones that are here need Jesus, and they need him badly. And we have spent, as Christians, millions and millions of dollars trying to figure out how to go into Muslim countries and spread the gospel. And now, God and Joe Biden have brought them here. And so we need to pray for their salvation and teach them about the truth of who Jesus is. So that is one. And that is the spiritual battle. And you know what? If we win that one, and there's an evangelistic wave that happens across America that brings many Muslims to Christ, then this issue does not become an issue. That is the best possible solution. And then I would say, second, short of that, we have some very, very difficult things that we're going to have to do, and we're going to have to do them. Or I prefer to do them politically and legally through the processes that we have set in our government, but they're going to be difficult. And as I said earlier, if we are not willing to say difficult things and do complicated things and uncomfortable things, then our children will be left to endure violent things. And I'm not saying that just to be an alarmist. I'm saying that at looking at 1,400 years of history of Islam, looking at what their writings compel them to do, looking at what or listening to what their imams are calling them to do right now. This is a real threat. It is an existential threat, and we need to take it seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Brent and Keresa, thank you so much for coming on the Daniel Report tonight. It was an honor to have you as my guest, and I appreciate the hard work you guys are doing for Texans. We are praying for you guys. The Flashpoint Army's praying for you guys. I know that we talk about Islam on Flashpoint almost every week. And so there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Christians engaging both in prayer as well as civic engagement on this issue. So we're going to get that information out there to all of them, and just hope that they will support this cause in Texas. So I want to thank you guys all so much for just all that you're doing. Also want to mention our website, danielnation.com. Keep up with our current podcast, our events that are coming up, my travel schedule and speaking schedule as well. And appreciate everybody tuning in tonight for this show. Brent and Keresa, God bless you guys, and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon.